All right, so we're back in the Splash Studios today, and today we're going to talk about putting together the Intermatic 19-inch sand system that comes with some of the pool kits that you get from Splash. So let's get started. Okay, so the first step obviously is to get everything out of the box. Make sure you got all your parts, because you're going to have parts that are going to be in bags in the tank. You're going to have parts that are going to be in the hair lint trap basket. In the pump box, you're going to have parts in the parts box. So you're going to have pieces, parts from various places. So get them all together. Make sure you got them all. The manual will show you what all there is. I do want to cover some things that you're not going to use. You're going to find a bag of parts like this that has some black adapters, some hose clamps, and your silicone grease along with your Teflon tape. Take the Teflon tape and the silicone grease out, but these pieces you're probably not going to use. Those pieces are for the blow molded hose that comes with the systems. Now, if you got a splash pool, you got the heavy duty upgraded blue hose that Splash makes just for our pools. So you're not going to need these hoses. There's one possible exception. I'll show you that at the end of the video. All right, so we're ready to get started. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this adapter plate off of the base plate. This adapter plate was made for a 24-inch system, and you have a 19-inch system. 7/16 wrench, super simple. So we're going to take this adapter plate off, and then we're going to hook the pump mount up. So before we put the tank on, I want to take the pump mount and put it on because it's a lot easier. And so you've got two Phillips screws here, one on each side. If you loosen those, stand it up, you'll see that this plate comes right off. 4 holes. And we've got 4 round holes on the base plate. We're going to mount it using the 4 screws or 4 nuts and bolts that came with it. So what I did was I took and marked these holes just so you can see, but they're the only 4 round holes on the base plate. So don't be confused by any of the oblong holes. You're using the 4 round holes. Okay, so we're going to take our base plate from the pump and we're going to line up our 4 holes with the 4 round holes, and we're going to use the bolts that they supplied, and we're going to run them up from the bottom. Once you get that in, you're going to take your flat washer, your lock washer, and then your nut, and put on. And we'll do this for the other 3. Okay, so we've got our mounting plate attached to the base plate. So now we're going to put the pump back on. So you're simply going to loosen these 2 Phillips screws, sit it on the back, tilt it down, and the 2 Phillips screws go in those slots right there. So once you've got it set down in the slots, you're going to take your Phillips screwdriver and simply tighten those screws back up. Make sure you do both sides. All right, so now we're going to attach the tank to the base plate. In your parts, you have 2 bolts that have smooth, flat heads. These are the ones we're going to use to attach the tank to the base plate. You're going to put the bolt up under on the bottom of the tank, and it's going to come up through the hole. So I'm going to do this one on the back. And by the way, when you line it up, you'll notice there's cutouts. You want to make sure that you get the cutout here in the center that allows you to have the drain over here on this side. Got that one. Now we'll do this one. And then it's simply a matter of setting the base plate up over them. And you've got a flat washer and a nut that you're going to put on each one. And you're going to tighten them down. Okay, so we've tightened down both of these nuts. By the way, these are 1/2 inch, and the 4 nuts on the bottom that hold the pump base plate are also 1/2 inch. So let's go to the next step. Okay, so the next step is we've got to install the laterals that go in the vertical that goes in the tank. So you're going to take your sand shield off, and by the way, this is not trash. Hang on to this. You're going to need this later. But it opens up the tank, and so this is the vertical that's going to go in the tank, just like this, but we have to install the laterals on here. These are your laterals. You should have 8 of these in your package. They're a simple quarter turn, so you're going to find where it goes in, turn it a quarter turn, locks in, just like that. So here's the trick. You can put 2 of these on the outside, and then put it in, and now you have to put the rest of them on inside the tank. So you're going to reach in, find it, quarter turn, and then go on to the next one. All right, so we've got our laterals installed. So now we're going to put the vertical in. We want it in the center at the bottom. Then we're going to take our sand shield. You're going to take the center cap and put over the vertical, just like that, to hold it in place. On to our next step. All right, so our next step is we're going to add the pump unions. Now, if you look in your parts, you're going to find 2 of these big unions, and I say big because you've got a large set that usually comes in the pump box, and you've got a smaller set. The smaller ones are going to go to the multi-port. You'll see that later. There's also an adapter nut that's in there, but it doesn't have a collar, so you can tell that that's not it. So we're looking for the 2 larger ones that have the spinning collars on them, okay? Each one has an O-ring, and you also have the silicone grease. So you're going to take a little bit of silicone grease, put on your fingers, put all around this O-ring, and then the O-ring goes in the groove on the bottom of the union, fits right in there. And one of the unions is going to go on top, just like that. Put the other ring in, and the second one goes on the front. Make sure that those O-rings stay in those grooves. Just get them good and snug. Since it has an O-ring, the O-ring is going to do the sealing. Okay, so we've got both of our pump unions on. Next step. All right, so the next step is going to require just a little bit of imagination. We're going to add the sand now, but since I'm in the studios and we already have a system on our pool here, this is just for the filming. This system is going to take 180 pounds of number 20 silica sand. So 180 pounds, remember that. 19-inch system, 180 pounds. So we have this sand shield. Remember I told you make sure you hang on to that. So what that's going to do is that's going to keep the sand from going in the vertical that we put in, goes around it and fills up the tank. I'll give you a little hint on this. Fill it about halfway full of water before you put the sand in there. So get it about half full, then start dumping your sand in there, 180 pounds. Make sure this sand shield stays in place, because if that comes off, you're dumping sand down the vertical. We don't want that. Remember I told you, don't lose this when we started. All right, once we get the sand in there, now you're no longer going to have a use for this, but hang on to it for when you need to change your sand. Depending on where you are, sometimes sand will last 3, 4, even 5 years before you have to change it out. If you do a good job of backwashing it, it'll last longer. So let's add the multi-port now. All right, so we've got our sand in, so now we can take our sand shield off. Let's save that for later. By the way, another good tip is put this thing where you want it before you put 180 pounds of sand in it. That's a beast to try to move around. Something else I should have mentioned earlier, I may have, make sure your drain is on the outside, so when you do get ready to drain it, it'll be in the right spot. Okay, so the multi-port. This is your multi-port. If you hear me call it a spider valve, sorry, that's out of habit. This just kind of looks like a spider if you get inside here. So multi-port is the term I'll try to use. So we're going to take our multi-port, and you've got a very large O-ring. We're going to put it on from the bottom. Fits nice and snug. And then we're going to put the multi-port on the tank. Now when you put it on, make sure that you pay attention, because you've got several inlets and outlets on here. You've got one that says return, you've got one that says waste, and you've got one that says pump. We want to make sure that the pump is facing the pump. So I'm going to put this on, and we're going to get our vertical inside. That slips right over the top. Okay, so we have the multi-port installed. We've got it set down on the vertical. It's flush at the top. We've got the pump pointed towards the pump. So now we're going to take our 2 pieces of the locking collar. We have 2 halves, and we have 2 bolts with brass nuts. If you're wondering why they're brass, it's so they won't rust, which comes in very handy. So we're going to take these and put the 2 halves together, obviously. All right, so we put our locking collar on, and by the way, I didn't put both nuts and bolts in and then put it on. It won't fit. You can put one in, and then slip it on and put the other nut and bolt in. So when you're putting it on and tightening it up, you want to try to do the two bolts evenly, okay? So I'm going to tighten one down until it gets a little snug, then I go to the other one until it gets a little snug. Then I'm going to go back and forth. You know, I may do 2, 3, 4 turns over here. Then I'm going to go do the same thing over here. And I'm just going to keep doing this until it's fairly tight. I mean, I want to get this one pretty tight. I'm going to keep that up until I've got it pretty tight. All right, so now what that does is that holds that multi-port down on top of the canister. So we've got our multi-port installed now. We've got the pump pointed towards the pump. Next step, we're going to attach the hose that runs from the pump to the filter. And by the way, this is a pump and filter system, but a lot of people think this is the pump. It doesn't matter. This is actually the pump. It moves the water. This is the filter. It filters the water. So this is the pump. This is the filter. All right, so for this step, we're going to need the white hose. We're going to need the adapter nut. And you can see this one doesn't have a collar, so it's the only one of those you have. There should be an O-ring with it, and we're going to need some Teflon tape. So we're going to take this Teflon tape. One end has a locking collar, the other end has threads. So we're going to put the Teflon tape on the threads, and when you're putting your Teflon tape on, make sure that you always wrap it clockwise. Anything with just threads, you want to put Teflon tape on. So I'm going clockwise. I'm going to go probably 5, 6, 7, maybe even 8 wraps if I'm really feeling generous. Just pull it off. Now the threaded piece is going to go on the pump, okay? And we have to put this on first. So we're going to get it started. We want to get that dude in there pretty tight. And if there's a curve to the hose, we want it to be towards the pump, just like that, okay? So the next step is we're going to take the adapter, which doesn't have a collar on it, so you should only have one of these. We're going to put it in with the O-ring. Now, since this is threads into threads, remember it's the one that says pump, we're going to put nylon or Teflon tape on it. And remember, we're always going clockwise. Again, 5, 6, 8 wraps. Want to get it in nice and snug. And the good thing about Teflon tape is you really can't over tighten it. The Teflon tape does a good job. Okay, so we've got that in. Now we've got this O-ring. Here's our locking collar. So anywhere there's a locking collar, you're going to have an O-ring. You're going to see a groove at the top of this. The O-ring sets in the groove. And this locking collar is simply going to go on right on top of this. Tighten it down. Okay? You can see that that's a tight fit and the angle doesn't always line up. If you'll take this canister, this tank, and lean it in just a little bit, it'll line that up for you. Boom. Takes care of it. All right, let's go to the next step. And if you're still having trouble getting this on, here's even another trick. Take the big one loose down here. Then get this tight and then put this back on. Just make sure that when you put it back on, your O-ring is still in place down here. Tighten it back down. All right, so the next step is now we're going to hook up our incoming water. So coming from the skimmer on your splash pool, which is the hose at the bottom that comes out through the wall, that's your skimmer suction. So your water is going to come from the skimmer and it's going to go into the hair lint trap, or this basket with the clear lid here. So this is where usually you would use that blow molded black hose that came with it, but we're not doing that. So you have a threaded nipple that came with your splash pool, and on this threaded nipple, make sure that you pay attention because there's a stamping that says hose side, because the threads here and here are different. Now, I've already put my Teflon tape on this one. I'm going to screw it into here. And we'll screw the threaded nipple down pretty snug. Okay? Then I'm going to take my hose that's coming in, and I'm going to make sure that I have a hose gasket, and it goes on right here. Now, anytime you're using one of the splash hoses with the hose gaskets, you want to get it snug, but don't take something and just really wrench on it, because since you have that flat gasket, there's a possibility that you could pinch that gasket and roll it over, and then it's going to leak. If you don't put the gasket in there, you'll see a little bit of leak around the collar. That's evidence that you probably forgot the hose gasket. All right, so there's our incoming water. Now we're on to the next step. All right, so we've got our incoming water. Now let's talk about our return, or water that's going back to the pool. So on the multi-port, you're going to have one opening that says return, obviously. So we're going to use the other threaded nipple that came with your splash pool. We're going to do the Teflon tape. Make sure that you get the hose side out. Screw the threaded nipple in. You take your return hose. Make sure you use a hose gasket. And this is going to be our water that goes back to the pool and is in the return jet. You know, that nice little jet that you like to lean up next to, blows the water nice and hard. All right, cool. So we've got water coming into the pump, and we've got water coming out of the filter going back to the pool. That completes the circulation of our water. There's still just a couple little things left. All right, so one of the last things we have to do now is to install the pressure gauge. And on the multi-port, you're going to see a small hole right back here, and that's where your pressure gauge goes. Make sure you put Teflon tape on it. Remember, clockwise. And when you do screw this in, make sure that you get it facing whichever direction you want, depending on where your pump filter is. So when I tighten this down, if I'm on this side, I'm going to make sure that I can see the gauge from this side. If you're on the other side, go the other side. Make it easy for yourself. All right, let's wrap this thing up. Okay, so I mentioned at the beginning there might be something that you could do with this blow molded hose. So here it is. Every once in a while on a sand system, you have to backwash the system. In other words, you have to flow the water backwards, and it blows all the debris that has settled in the sand, it blows it out. In other words, it cleans your system, allows you to use it longer. When you do that, the water that comes out doesn't go back to the pool, it's waste water. So you have one more port that says waste. And so when you put your spider valve, first you'll turn your pump filter off, put your spider valve, see I said spider valve, I knew it wouldn't make it through the whole thing. You put your multi-port to backwash, turn your pump back on, and it's going to blow the water out the waste. So if you don't want it just blowing out this side like this, you can take one of the pieces that were included, Teflon tape, screw it into the port that says waste, and then take one of these pieces of black molded hose, put your hose clamp on it, which is included, slide it up over it, and tighten the hose clamp down. And now you at least got a 6-foot piece of hose to control your wastewater where you want it. You could get a longer piece of hose and run it wherever you want. But you're going to do this usually for about 30 to 60 seconds. And the way you can tell when you're done is you've got this small sight glass right here, this clear window. If you'll watch that, it's going to be nasty when you first start. Let it run until that sight glass is nice and clean. Once it's nice and clean, turn your pump and filter off, put the handle to rinse, turn the system back on. It's still going to go out the waste. You're going to be rinsing the system for about 30 seconds, turn your pump and filter off, put the handle back to filtration, turn it on, you're rocking again. It's that easy. Sand systems are a great filtration system. They're easy to take care of for the simple reason that you can backwash them. All right, that should take care of your system. If you have any questions, email us, give us a call. We'll do whatever we can to help you out. If we need to make a video, we'll make videos for you.